Are you your body? In a way, yes. But is there a point where this stops being true? How much of your body can you remove before you stop being you? Does this question even make sense? Your physical existence is made up of cells, trillions of them, at least 10 times the number of stars in the Milky Way. A single cell is a living organism on its own, a machine built from around 50,000 different proteins. It has no consciousness, intent, or purpose. It simply exists. But it is still an individual entity. Together, these cells form a complex structure to perform tasks such as processing food, gathering resources, transporting substances, and guarding your body. If you extract one of your cells and place it in the right environment, it will continue to live for a period of time. Therefore, your cells can survive without the entirety of you, but you can't survive without them. If we were to remove every cell from your body, you would cease to exist. Is there a point at which a part of you stops being you? For instance, if you donate an organ, billions of cells will continue to live inside another person's body. Does that mean a part of you has become a part of someone else? Or is it just another body keeping a part of you alive? Let's imagine an experiment. You and a random person on the street start exchanging cells, one at a time. Your body receives one of theirs, and their body receives one of yours. At what point would they become you? Will this really happen, or is it just a crude way to describe teleportation? Let's make things even more complex. The perception of ourselves as a fixed, unchanging entity is unsustainable. Nearly all of your cells will die and be replaced throughout your life. In fact, around 250 million cells have already died since you began reading this. Every second, between 1 to 3 million cells in your body perish. Over a span of about 7 years, most of your cells will have been completely replaced at least once. Each time this renewal occurs, you become slightly different from what you were before. In essence, a part of you is constantly dying. If you're lucky enough to grow old, you'll have cycled through roughly 1 million billion cells. So what you perceive as you is merely a fleeting snapshot of your existence at any given moment. However, sometimes cells malfunction and refuse to die, challenging the concept of bodily unity. We call this condition cancer. These cells deviate from the biological agreement and become almost immortal. Cancer is not some external invader. It's a part of you that prioritizes its survival over yours. But one could argue that a cancer cell is essentially a separate entity inside your body, a being that simply wants to grow and persist. Can we blame it for that? A tragic yet remarkable example is the story of Henrietta Lacks. She was a young cancer patient who died in 1951. Normally, cells only survive a few days in the lab, making research difficult. However, Henrietta's cancer cells turned out to be virtually immortal. Over the decades, these cells were cultured and multiplied countless times, contributing to innumerable scientific breakthroughs and saving many lives. Henrietta's cells are still alive today, growing into what is now roughly 20 tons of living tissue. So parts of Henrietta continue to exist around the world, even though she's been considered dead for decades. How much of Henrietta is still in these cells? And, fundamentally, what truly defines that a cell is you? Perhaps the essence of you lies in the information stored within, your DNA. Up until recently, it was believed that every cell in your body carried the same genetic code. However, this turns out to be incorrect. Your genome is not static. It changes over time due to mutations and environmental influences. This is especially true for your brain. According to new research, a single neuron in your brain can have over 1,000 genetic mutations that are not found in its neighboring cells. But how much of your identity is actually tied to your DNA? Roughly 8% of the human genome is composed of remnants of ancient viruses that once infected our ancestors and merged with their DNA. Similarly, the mitochondria, which power each of your cells, were once independent bacteria that fused with the early ancestors of your cells. Even today, mitochondria still have their own distinct DNA, and each cell contains hundreds of these tiny structures that are not entirely human, but are still considered part of you. This complexity makes defining you even more difficult. Let's summarize. We know that we are made up of trillions of tiny elements, themselves composed of even smaller components, all in a constant state of flux. Together, these parts form a dynamic, ever-changing entity. Your structure and condition are in perpetual evolution. So, perhaps we can view ourselves as self-sustaining patterns without clearly defined boundaries. Patterns that, at some point, gain self-awareness and develop the ability to contemplate their own existence across time and space. Yet this pattern truly exists only in the present moment. When did this pattern first emerge? Was it at the moment of your conception? Or when the first human appeared? When did life first begin to take root on this small planet of ours? Or perhaps the story goes back even further, to when the elements that make up your body were forged in the heart of a star. The human brain evolved to make sense of the vastness of existence, yet the lines we draw around concepts like beginning and end, life and death, you and me, might not be as clear-cut as we think. These ideas could simply be constructs within a fluid and interconnected pattern, one that flows through this strange and beautiful universe. The question, who are we, isn't just an inquiry into our physical selves, but also into our consciousness. Just as cells can be separated from us, our brains too could be divided while still encased within our skulls, raising even deeper questions about identity and existence.